Hi, this is Josh Marshall from TPM Media. It's Wednesday, September 12th, 2007. Today we have part two of the interview we did last Friday with presidential candidate and former Senator John Edwards. In this part of the interview, Senator Edwards talks about Iraq, the surge, the Petraeus report that we've been hearing so much about over the previous 2 days, and even talks about how he's changed as a presidential candidate between now and when he first ran back in 2004. Take a look. To Iraq, everybody wants to know where the presidential candidates stand on Iraq. If you were president right now,
yes,
how soon would U.S. combat troops be out of Iraq?
9 or 10 months.
Okay. Now, you've talked about potentially a small residual force. Can you give people a sense of what that means?
Well, I'd get all our combat troops
Okay.
out. Assuming we're going to maintain our embassy in Baghdad, we'll have to have some force to protect our embassy.
Mm-hmm.
We always have to have that. And if there are American humanitarian workers there, it might be necessary, although I wouldn't commit to this at this point, it might be necessary to provide some protection for them. But that's it.
Okay. But really just a matter of protecting the embassy, possibly protecting other U.S. civilian personnel in the country
who are there
like
doing
that.
humanitarian work. we
And we have another one of these budget battles again. If you were in the Senate, how would you deal with confronting the president?
I've said this over repeatedly. I'll say it again. They should not submit a single funding bill to this president that doesn't have a timetable for withdrawal. And if he vetoes it, they ought to send him another one. They should hold their ground against him. And it's really very simple for me. No timetable, no funding.
Mm-hmm.
That should be what the Congress does. And I think they have the support of the American people. I go beyond that. I actually think they have a mandate from the American people to stand their ground against this president. They have the power to force him to start taking troops out of Iraq.
George Bush's failed management of the war in Iraq has made the problem of terrorism worse. The war provided al-Qaeda with a powerful tool for recruitment. It gives them a battlefield for training. It gave them an attractive target in American troops. And it diverted the resources of the U.S. military, weakening our force structure in the process. Even though the presence of U.S. troops has served as an attractive target for terrorists, our eventual withdrawal will not remove the threat. As president, I will redeploy troops into quick reaction forces outside of Iraq to perform targeted missions against al-Qaeda cells and to prevent genocide, a regional spillover of civil war.
Now, a couple specifics about Iraq that people talk about. One is, what about Iraqi Kurdistan? And that's sort of the one area where things, at least up until recently, have been relatively calm.
It's certainly calm.
It's much more potentially allied with the United States. What about, how does that fit into your withdrawal plans?
Well, here's what I think. First of all, the 40,000, 50,000 troops that I would take out immediately would largely come from the south and the north. Second, I do think that although America can't impose this on the Iraqis have to decide to do it themselves. I do think the notion of having 3 semi-autonomous states, Kurds in the north, Sunnis in the Sunni Triangle, Shia in the south, sharing oil revenue with some sort of national security force, I think that is attractive. I think it makes some sense. But this is something that they're going to have to decide to do for themselves.
So basically, and this is my other question specifically about Iraq, the idea that Iraq has to stay a unitary state as it has been for the last century, basically. That shouldn't be a major focus of American policy. It can be like a loose federation of 3 semi-autonomous.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Last thing I wanted to discuss: General Petraeus is going to be in Washington next week,
yeah.
And we're hearing all of these numbers from General Petraeus and General Odierno about falling numbers of civilian casualties. So voters hear that on the one hand. On the other, there's numbers from the Associated Press and so forth that say just the opposite. Who are people supposed to believe? Who do you believe? What do you believe is happening in terms of violence levels,
that the
civilian
information
deaths?
we get in this report when it comes to the White House is going to have political spin all over it. And look at, for example, the dispute between 2 government agencies just in the last few weeks about whether the benchmarks are being met. I mean, it's a perfect example. And actually, I think the DOD actually put pressure to get it, the other report changed, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
Here's what I think. I think that the Petraeus report will do everything in its power to not address the fundamental question. The reason for us having troops on the ground in Iraq under Bush's theory is to squelch the violence so that there can be some political solution. Has there been any progress made on the political front? That's the question. I mean, these other things, what's the point of the other things if they're not moving us toward a political solution?
Right.
Nobody believes there can be stability in Iraq without a political solution. And every indication I see, including the fact they went on vacation for 3 or 4 weeks, is that they are not making political progress. And so the questions, I believe, to Petraeus should be, has there been significant political progress? If not, can you give us any indication that you see that progress coming? And if the answer to those 2 questions is, I think the answer to both those questions is no. If the answer to those questions is no, how many American troops, how many American lives are we going to lose? How many more billions of dollars of American taxpayer money are we going to spend waiting for them to do something? Because that's all it is. Because without some political compromise, political reconciliation, there can't be stability in Iraq.
Even with that, even with the political dimension being the main issue, do you have an opinion on all the different conflicting information we hear about violence levels and stuff like that, and whether the surge has succeeded, even in military terms?
I don't believe the surge has succeeded, I'll tell you that, first of all.
Okay.
I think there have been some places, for example in Anbar, where the Sunni tribal leadership decided to work with America against al-Qaeda because they saw al-Qaeda as a bigger threat than America. I think they see both as threats, but they see al-Qaeda as a much more serious threat. That's a positive thing. I mean, there's no doubt that's a positive thing. But it's almost an entirely Sunni population. I mean, it doesn't address, for example, the Sunni-Shia conflict that exists in communities all over Iraq. So I think the bottom line is, unless we see some effort by Maliki, who's weak, the Shia-led government, and the Sunni leadership is incredibly fragmented. Unless we see some serious effort to reach a political solution, then the surge is a failure.
President Bush, like the Republicans following him today, and even unfortunately some Democrats, was stuck in the past, and he still is stuck in the past. He had no grasp of the new threats we faced, and so he failed to offer a vision to keep us safe in a world that's changed. Saddam Hussein was the threat he knew, so Iraq was the war he waged.
Last question. You obviously ran in 2004 for president. You seem like a very different candidate this time around. Just my sense, in economic terms, on foreign policy questions, what's happened for you? I mean, is it the experience of 4 more years of Bush? How have you changed politically since the first time that you ran?
I think it's a combination of seasoning and just continuing depth and work on these issues. I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is the world has really changed. It's amazing how much it's changed to me over the last several years. The war in Iraq has gotten much worse. America's reputation and role in the world has been much more diminished. Healthcare system here at home is increasingly dysfunctional. More people in poverty. The economic gap is becoming worse all the time. Global warming is now everybody recognizes a huge crisis facing America and the world. And I just don't think baby steps are going to fix these problems. I don't. I think political calculation and compromise and trying to figure out how to work our way through this, we're past all that. I mean, I think we're at a place in American history and in the world's history where strong, bold, decisive leadership is required. And we can't worry about what the other side is going to call us. You know, we have to have the strength of our convictions. We have to stand up and show some backbone because I think it's what America needs from us.
Got it. Well, Senator Edwards, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
So that's our interview with former Senator and presidential candidate John Edwards. If you didn't see part 1 of the interview, you can see it at veracifyer.com. I'm Josh Marshall from TPM Media, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.